Hey y'all, welcome back. This is part 2 of a two-parter explaining the pilot's augmentations and subsequent continuation. So if you haven't seen part 1, a card should be up on screen now. So go check it out, and after that, come back see this. If you've already seen that one, then prepare to drop into some lore on Titanfall.
Nanomachine, son!
As explained previously, the nanite augmentations give the pilot the tools to be able to be an absolute death machine. But concerning biology, what is the most important part of the body? The brain and nervous system. For the pilot in Titanfall 1, Titanfall 2, and eventually Titanfall 3 to operate at maximum capacity, these would clearly need to be overhauled as well. But what exactly needs to be done to the human form to make it near impervious to death and faster and more agile than physically possible? A solid connection between mind and machine. Let's explore these connections in detail. So let's start with the most basic thing that needs to be changed and move outwards from there. The brain itself is a very delicate and powerful organ. Humans are the highest thinking creatures that Earth has ever produced so far, or at least we are relatively sure of that. But our reaction time and ability to think is still slowed by how our brain's neurons connect with one another and in what order they connect. What it seems to me is that they have an extra amount of processing that allows the brain itself to be changed in some way. I'm going to continue to operate under the principle that the nanites are injected into the pilots during training, so this leads me to believe that the nanites are actually having an impact on communication with the brain. Right now, electrical signals are being sent back and forth to discern what I'm saying to you. In between each neuron is a gap called the synaptic gap. Here, neurotransmitters are sent to the next neuron to continue the signal, which allows us to think. My thoughts on this are that the nanites may embed themselves in these gaps, negating the need for the chemicals. All things considered, chemicals are actually very slow, and it's not the best way to communicate in between cells. I mean, if there was a better way, I'm pretty sure our body would have already done it, but just know that chemicals are relatively slow. But a nanite would be able to continue the signal almost instantaneously to the next neuron. Even if it's only cut down by a few milliseconds, when it comes to thousands of neurons sending and receiving signals, this time can start to add up. Overall, this would give the pilot a much faster thinking ability than a normal person would, and which in turn, this will give them the ability to almost slow down combat and make better decisions faster than your average human. The nanites do a second thing as well. They record the brain on a cellular level. Right now, scientists are trying to figure out how to store the consciousness of a person into computers, because that would give us the ability to skip the worst part of life, death. With your consciousness stored digitally, it can be moved around and downloaded as well as saved. Thousands of years later, your family could visit you, and in your computer form, they could ask you questions. What was it like being alive during such a primitive era? You know, cool things like that. And you would be the one answering, because it wouldn't just be a copy of you, it would be your consciousness. This would also solve the next problem if nanites are going to be the answer, which is one of the most difficult things about the pilot training is that it has a 98% fatality rate. Obviously, with that type of high death expectancy, a lot of people would be hesitant to die over training. That is, unless it's only the body that dies. If you knew with absolute certainty that your consciousness would live on and it could be transferred to another body, the training death rate really doesn't look as bad as it did when, death is actually permanent. So because death is not permanent, it's one of those, okay, well, I might die, I probably will die, but I'll be alive again, so whatever. To support my hypothesis on this, Bliss can be heard as saying he's gonna hold a grudge whenever you kill another pilot. How would somebody hold a grudge if they're dead? It's because their consciousness has been recorded and will be able to be placed into another body, so without the fear of death, pilots pursue this training at the detriment to their original meat suit. The nanites complete a third overhaul to the brain as well. They will help establish a neural link. To interact with a Titan is apparently a very intimate thing concerning your brain and machine. Your interactions become one, and the Titan can almost predict the moves you are going to make. Without a neural link, the Titan will not work with the pilot, but this connection makes them work together much better, almost as if the 50-ton machine has become an extension of the pilot's body, all due to nanites. To return back to a point I glossed over earlier about the downloaded consciousness, this would also fall in line with how a pilot can be regened. It states that the training has taken a toll on your body, but you can be regened at a price. When you do regen, you lose your memories but maintain your skills. This sounds an awful lot like the recording of a pilot's consciousness concerning battle, but really not their social interactions. Perhaps the base human personality is recorded, but a collection of nanites spend more time in the cerebellum, responsible for muscle coordination, but also in the other autonomous nervous sections, which are typically responsible for like knee-jerk knee-jerk reactions. If you didn't know, there are certain parts of your nervous system that operate almost as like mini brains that make choices to move your arms, legs, hands, feet, things like that quickly in case of injury. If you grab something really hot, you immediately pull away without the brain actually sending that signal to pull away. It's a survival technique as it takes longer to send an impulse to the brain rather than, say, the middle of the back. Anyways, these areas are recorded in the pilot, so when they regen, they remember battle, but they might not remember everything concerning weapon usage or certain functions of the Titan weapons, so they must relearn those. But with more money, you are able to get better nanites, which helps you remember certain things about weapons, which means you can really keep them as you regen. Speaking of regen, let's discuss the acquisition of a new body. How exactly are they ranked in terms of importance? Well, after discussing with some people, I think I've got a pretty good idea on the hierarchy. As a pilot progresses, he or she becomes more deadly, and they're going to gain in notoriety. This renown is going to earn them weapons, titans, stronger weapons, and then stronger titans, and so on and so forth. All pilots start out as tier 1 pilots. You get basic weapons, maybe a grapple, things that if you are killed in battle won't really be missed by the IMC or militia. These pilots are going to have your basic human body. They will have the nanite injection so that they can be recorded and saved as they learn, but your equipment isn't great. If you survive long enough, then you get to move to tier 2. Tier 2 pilots are going to possess more augmentations and have better weapons. They have either survived long enough or had their consciousness saved and transferred that they have learned to be better and not die. Or really, in gamer talk, they got good. They will have active camouflage, grenades that aren't just explosive, and they will probably sport more precise functions. Their Titan shows their triumph as the stock weapons and armor have been changed to a more personal touch. Tier 2s, I believe, are the main stopping point for most pilots in their human form, as by this point, your literal body begins to slow you down and hinder you. Your neurons aren't quick enough anymore. Your muscles feel like they're too sluggish in contraction. There is a better form to be had, so let's move on to the next tier. The next tier is tier 3. In tier 3, there are no humans. The person has given up their humanity to become the ultimate killing machine, literally. Your consciousness is transferred into a specter body, and typically specters are easy to kill as you can't program years of combat experience effectively. Now that the consciousness of a pilot's body is in there though, they aren't hindered by the slow mechanics of a human body. They are able to use stims to make themselves faster, there is no risk of falling and hurting yourself, and in theory, you would be much more resistant to bullets and damage overall. Not just that, but you no longer have to rely on muscle contraction to kill an enemy. At this point, it's all hydraulic presses and shiny metal. Tier 3 pilots have been around the longest, are the toughest, and have the best equipment. They would be the most effective to hire, but they are probably going to be the most expensive as well. So I know some of you disagree with my nanite theory about the pilots, but to me, it does make a lot of sense. And considering there is next to no lore about pilots, a lot of assumptions are being made here, but I highly doubt that they are just your average human being with a jump kit, mainly because I don't know any average human being who can punch a robot in the face and kill it. That just doesn't make any sense to me, so there must be something else going on there. So biologically speaking, there must be some heavy augmentations in place. So what do you guys think about my hypothesis concerning this? I would love to hear it down in the comments. If you guys thought the video was interesting, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I now know with certainty that likes get your videos seen, so I guess a like, I would really appreciate it. Also, did you know that I have a Patreon now? If you are feeling inclined and want to donate, I would appreciate it. If not, seriously, do not sweat it. It's not really that big of a deal. I'm gonna still be posting videos anyways, because I really like doing this because it's fun. So, I would also like to thank Adam Hartswick for donating to the Patreon. He is the first, so always remember you're first. I do appreciate it, man. But alright guys, that about does it for me, so I will see y'all in the next one.